Good morning, fellow members of Bethel CME Church, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on when you happen to open this on your computer. Welcome. This is just an update and sort of moving us forward as it relates to our upcoming symposium workshops and the strategies for doing that. We had discussed this just briefly at one of our previous workshops, and I had indicated that I would come back with more of a definitive plan for how we could go about doing this, and just consider this that plan. Before we move on, I just wanted to run quickly through who our officers are in the church, because these officers are important leaders within the church, especially on our operational side. And I really wanted us to know who they are, and so that I always have to refresh our memory on that. And I actually took these right out of our listing on the bulletin. So if there's anything missing or wrong, please forgive me for that, and I will correct that on upcoming slides. Reverend Napoleon Gaucher is our pastor, and it was Reverend Gaucher who really came up with the idea of us having a way that we could all get together as a church and begin to build as a church community, as one community. So we appreciate his foresight in seeing the need for us to do that. Mr. Larry Jones, chairman of the Steward Board and our treasurer. Mrs. Yvette Hickey is the president of the Stewardess Board. Mr. Travis Hicks, chair of the trustee board. Mrs. Jackie Hicks, president of the lay ministry. Mrs. Minnie Titus, the president of the Women's Missionary Society. Mrs. Brenda Johnson, the director of Christian education and president of the choir. Mr. Herb Titus is a Sunday school superintendent. Mrs. Bessie Rose is the president of the ushers. Mrs. Lena Hall, director of music and the recording steward. Mrs. Edna Gaucher, president of the board of missions and evangelism. Mrs. Barbara McKinney, the chair of the senior club, and Mrs. Gloria Jones, the president of the nurses circle. Mr. Jim Johnson, the coordinator of the ministry to men. I didn't see a listing for a chair of the youth department of the CYF. I assume that may be open, and if it is, I'm looking forward to being able to add a name to that at such a time as we get one. So those are our church officers that we have listed so far. Those are our leaders, and we just want to make sure we always recognize them, because they will also be the leaders in a number of the symposia that we have coming up. Our introduction, we really want our symposia to be interactive sessions where people feel very free about speaking their mind, saying what's on their mind, working together to make a difference. We use a colloquial format in which everybody in the room really becomes a part of that whole thing. It's a dynamic way of interacting with each other. We will respect each other. We will follow the ground rules that we had set up previously. We'll have steering groups to address those parking lot issues. You'll recall that parking lot issues are issues that were identified in earlier workshops as being important, but perhaps those issues were brought up at a time when we were discussing something else and they didn't really relate to the topic that was under discussion at the time. We didn't want to throw those issues away because we knew they were important issues too, so we sort of grouped them in what we call parking lot issues, that we wrote them down and we saved those issues. And those are the issues that are driving the rest of our symposium and our workshops, because we're integrating that with the current topics, and I think we can do that. And that way we can make sure we get action on everything that we're working on. We're going to use a steering team approach. We're going to each parking lot issue will be assigned to a steering team. You're going to see that as I go through this progressively, because you may be one of those steering teams that are coming up, and the steering teams will then address their assigned issue. Now, the parking lot issues that already fall within the realm of our boards, existing boards and auxiliaries, will be referred to whatever is the appropriate board and auxiliary that it belongs. And we're going to use the role of the boards and auxiliary chairpersons whenever possible, as outlined in the discipline of the CME Church, as a reference point to help us in deciding which issues need to be referred to what board or what auxiliary. And that's exactly what I did when you look further over here. And as a facilitator, I will actually go over the guidelines with the chairpersons of the designated board or auxiliary before they actually come in to do the workshop, so that we're all on the same playing field. The steering team members, we're going to ask you to really design a presentation, allow time for the audience discussion and feedback and questions and answers. We're going to ask for written handouts, because we know that some material beside our own minds have to guide some of the things that we're talking about. So we want to hear what's in our own minds, but we also want to have some written material for us to look at and to review as well. And any references or supporting information. Our steering team leaders and our steering team members, we are going to consistently ask that we are very open to questions questioning and feedback. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and we will not be afraid to have feedback. We just have to look and see what we're going to do with all of that feedback. And don't be afraid. We want us to ask for assistance from other appropriate persons who may have the experience and knowledge about the issue and how to address it. It may be somebody else who's here in the church who's worked very strongly and deeply, perhaps in that role previously, or it might be somebody from somewhere else outside. It might be in another church that we want to invite in. It might be one of our sister churches. It might be our pastor. It might be, we don't know, but we do need to know that we need to reach outside of just the limitations of our own heads and get more information as we need it. Portions of the presentation, I would like to really look at increasing how many people in the congregation can really have access to this, because it seems that we're not really getting a bunch of people who are coming, not at any single time, to our own site symposium and workshop. We get a different group every time we do it. And so we over time, I'm picking up a lot of people. That's great, but I still don't have the large core group that we're still trying to reach. So I'm going to have more conference calls that will be there. I'm going to look at videotaping and audio taping sessions. I'm going to have printed instructions so people will know how to call in remotely whenever we have conference calls. All we really need for that is a speaker phone if we're having an on-site meeting. And at some point, I even may have some symposia or workshops that are fully done via conference call, or for those people who have access to computers, it may be conference calls plus online. So we have some exciting things that are going to be coming here to Bethel. We will be giving certificates of appreciation and attendance to those people who attend at least one face-to-face. We talked about that. Remember, our goal is Bethel moving forward. Bethel meaning house of prayer, so it's house of prayer moving forward. House of prayer moving forward. So each session will begin and end with prayer. We've already had one colloquia. That was with Travis Hicks, actually presented for us information related to interpersonal communications, provided us with handouts. We thank Mr. Hicks very much for that. He will be joined by Ms. Bessie Rose, who's working on that from a different viewpoint, because communication, especially in today's world, covers a whole lot more of who we are, and we have to communicate with among each other. We've got to be able to communicate with people who are external to us. There's just so many strategies, and so Bessie Rose will be looking at that, and then over time we will have a real written communication plan. I mentioned before, this is something that Reverend Gaucher is very interested in, and he has already said he would like to be a part of this, and he would like to have whatever Mrs. Rhodes and Mr. Hicks are coming up with to have it. He wants to sit down with them and go through that as well, so that he can add his feedback. So we appreciate that. I mentioned I'll be the general facilitator for the overall symposium sessions. You've already heard about Travis and Bessie. Reverend Napoleon Gaucher is our pastor, our leader, our CEO, and so he's the most appropriate person to bring us up to date on the church mission, the vision, the operations, and the role of the minister and the lay leaders, and the Bethel CME plan for maximizing those roles. Brenda Johnson, director, and her members of the Board of Christian Education, we figured that the most appropriate place to send this relating to establishing a Christian education curriculum would indeed be back to the Board of Christian Education. That's why we see that here. Jackie Travis, the lay ministry, and her whoever she wants for her lay panelists, looking at strategies for building an effective lay department, and what's the Bethel plan for that, and what does she need from us to make that plan come alive? What does that look like? And then Herb Titus, Sunday School Superintendent, and Brenda Johnson, the Director of Christian Education, because the Sunday School does report to the Director of Christian Education, and looking at strategies for building and growing a Sunday School, including the youth, and what's the Bethel CME plan for that. Yvette Hickey, excuse me, I'll change that on the slide, that's Hickey, Yvette Hickey, the Stewardess Board Chairperson, and Jim Johnson, the Steward Chairperson. We'd like to bring those two together and have them bring us on history and role of the stewards and the stewardesses in the CME Church, and local strategies for success. What's our Bethel plan to assure that's successful? And then Gloria Jones, the Nurses Circle Chairperson, and whoever she has on her membership, we're going to be inviting her to come and to talk to us more about the roles and strategies of nurses and other healthcare providers in the CME Church, and what's the Bethel CME plan for that, because Gloria is very active in the community, very well known in her role as a registered nurse as well, and in leading this distinguished group. In the agenda, we're going to be split between two 1-hour sessions and then one 30-minute session. You can bring your own refreshments, you can share the food or whatever. We're going to open always with a prayer. I'll always introduce first-time attendees, and we'll always have an overview of the topic that we're going to be talking about even before we get started. The symposia leaders will take over from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock on each day of a scheduled symposia workshop. And they, will, of course, will give a background for what they're doing, what was the process they used to develop whatever they're presenting to call their Bethel CME plan. Remember, this is a draft, and we're just sort of working on it all together. It's just a topic under discussion. That's all it is at this point, so don't get too stressed out about it. And then what elements did they look at when they were trying to make the plan, and why did they look at those elements, and why not? And then we'll talk about it. And then any conference calls they want to follow up, we'll go ahead and schedule those too. So after that, then I'll come back in again, and we'll have some positive. I like people to give positive feedback to each other to sort of reaffirm who we are as Christians. What is it about each other in that meeting that we just really like? Maybe to somebody you might say, I really like that comment you made about so and so and so and so, but we only want the positive comment. We only want to give positive feedback now. Or your smile when we were talking about so and so just really made me feel good about it. Well, I like the way that you sort of opened the door for Sister So and So to be able to say something about this too. Or, it's just something about the way you were listening that I thought was just really great. It really helped us all to know that maybe we need to talk about this. Or maybe that question you asked was really great. That helped us to think differently about something. You see what I'm saying? Okay. And then we'll follow through on them, and then we'll have an adjournment, and that'll really be the end of that session. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on this so that you would know. So I'm going to put this on YouTube. It'll go on as a private video. Only those of you who have the link will be able to see it. And I'm going to put one other thing on YouTube as well, and that's just a little promo piece that I did as a sample. I want you to take a look at that. Tell me what you think, and maybe we can get some of our young people to work on something like that. It's a real serious promo piece for us. This one is just a demo piece that I just did off the top of my head. So thank you very much, and you'll be getting some more information as far as dates, times, places, and whatever after I've had a chance to get your feedback on what's convenient dates, times, and places. So you'll have a chance to do that soon. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.